All right, let's start out talking about the feet, lower leg, what's happening down south. So one of the big points I made was we want to try and get that foot strike back under the hip. And remember, if we're going to be completely accurate, you cannot get your foot strike right under your hip. Otherwise, you would end up falling over or you are the fastest person on the planet. So what we want to think about is as close to. So we cue it that way, knowing we're not going to exactly get there. So here's the reason. It's very common for people to get into this overstriding pattern where we get the foot too far out in front. And it doesn't matter if you're rear foot, midfoot, or forefoot. Getting that foot out there, one, we're going to have a lot more impact stress coming into the body. And then two, we're actually braking or decelerating until the hip passes over the ankle. Once the hip passes over the ankle, now we're moving into propulsion phase and we're actually accelerating forward. So we want to try to get that foot strike back under us. A couple other things. We want to look at the position of your foot. So I touched on this. It's definitely been a pet peeve of mine over time where people talk about, no, you have to be midfoot or forefoot to be a good runner. I'm going to include an image where it shows, this was from the 2012 Olympic trials for the 10K, and it's obviously your top of the top. So when you look at the top 6, they are not all forefoot strikers. So you've got a little bit of rear foot, midfoot, and forefoot. So your self-selected is totally fine. Here are some key points though that you do need to keep in mind. So if you are a rear foot striker, simply means the rear of your foot is making contact first, okay? Doesn't make you a bad person. What we want to do is have a low foot angle. So if somebody's coming in with a very steep foot angle, that's going to be a problem. We're going to end up with a lot of foot slap coming down, a lot more stress going into the lower leg. So we're looking for a low foot angle. The second thing is going to be, once we make contact, we want to get to a forward shin angle. So we don't want contact here where we have this backward leaning shin angle. Again, a lot of force coming back into the body. We want to end up vertical or a little bit of a forward shin angle when we make contact as we're transitioning through that mid stance phase and then moving into our propulsion phase. So your keys are going to be bring your feet back under you as much as possible. We want a lower or flatter foot angle relative to the surface you're running on. And then we want a vertical to forward leaning shin angle or shank to help minimize that stress and then move us forward. So one of the suggestions I had was to use a metronome, and that's a good way to start getting yourself on count. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my metronome here. And all I did was go on, it's an app, I think it's just called Metronome. There are a whole lot of them out there. All you need is something that is going to give you a beat and you can adjust it. So this is that ideal 90 or 180 for both feet, 90 for one foot cadence that everybody talks about. So this is that number where we tend to have kind of a sweet spot where our efficiency and our power and everything kind of matches up the best. Now, some people are going to be a little bit slower, some are going to be a little bit faster. So you can start at this 90 and just kind of see how you feel, or you can check yours, see exactly where you are, and then work on shifting it. You don't want to, if you're at, 75 or 80 for whatever reason, you don't want to all of a sudden try to go to 95. You're going to end up causing some issues. So with this, I'm just going to try to get one foot, beat, beat, beat. So right now I'm running at a 90 cadence. Now, one of the better ways to think about your cadence, I try not to get people thinking about their foot because they're listening to the metronome and they're trying to jam their foot into the ground to match that. What I want you to do is think about using your arms. So I think elbow and pushing the elbow back. When the arm goes back, that's your count. So right elbow is on count. And here's the nifty thing. There's a neurological connection between your arms and your legs. So whatever cadence your arms are moving at, your legs are going to move at the same cadence. And that's going to help you minimize and get away from that stomping into the ground to try to match the metronome. If you want to try a neat little drill, you can run with no arms and fast legs, but go out there and try to run with a really fast arm swing and super slow legs. It's impossible, you can't do it. So that's why I prefer to use arm swing to help govern my cadence instead of always thinking about the foot or the foot making contact. All right, so summarize this when we're looking at the lower body. Your self-selected foot strike is A-OK, rear, mid, or forefoot. We want to bring that strike back under the hip as much as possible. We're going to use a metronome to work on that. If we speed up our cadence, we're going to naturally get the foot back under a little bit better. That's going to avoid the overstriding component. We want a foot angle that is flatter towards the surface you're running on, particularly if you're a rear foot striker. And then we want to make sure that once we have our contact, we have vertical shin angle to forward, and we don't have a backward leaning shin angle. So work on those components and you're going to become a more efficient runner, and you're going to minimize the stress going into your lower body.